I'm an illustrator in 12-step recovery. I go by the name 12Drawings. I've been taking one word at a time from the original Alcoholics Anonymous literature written in the 1930s by Bill Wilson. In the 1952, he later wrote a book called The 12 Steps and 12 Traditions with the help of at least one other person. And those traditions have become very important to 12-step recovery groups as well. Webster's did not publish a dictionary in the 50s. It did publish one in the 30s, so I used that as the most recent one I could find to look at the definition of these certain words in the traditions. Tradition number 9 says, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. Now, you can kind of laugh and say AA should never be organized. I just think they mean it should not be turned into like a corporation with structures and things, legal structures that are identical to how a big business runs, but I'm not sure. They certainly want it to be done in an orderly way. We may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. Now that I'd like to know, without having a structured organization, how do you make people responsible to those they serve? In the 1934 dictionary, I looked up the word responsible. It says, and you have to kind of read this carefully, it says liable to respond. The full definition is liable to respond. I didn't think that was quite enough for me to understand that definition, so I looked up the word liable in the same dictionary. Liable was defined as bound or obligated in law or equity. I'm sorry, I can't say that I immediately understood that, but I looked up later and it said liable to respond just means you are bound to respond. So the service boards or committees are bound to respond to those they serve. They can't just ignore them and go on their way. The way that I illustrated this was to reach back in my own family history to a relative in World War I who served as a physician in active battle. And at that time, there was terrible trench warfare. There was what you probably have heard of as no man's land, where between the trenches there were areas where anyone who went out there would get shot. It was an extremely deadly situation. You can see all these heavily armed soldiers ducking down into a trench rather than daring to get up into this dead man's land out here. And yet here is a medic who is tending to a soldier who's been wounded. Why is he doing it? Why isn't he down here? Well, he is liable, meaning obliged in law. That may be that he will be, thrown in prison if he doesn't go out and help these people. But the truth is, there's a second word here that I had to look up, equity, which means you're morally bound to do it. Morally. You won't be thrown in jail, but it's the right thing to do. And certainly people who served in these situations, played these roles, they each had to come to their own decision on what they were morally bound to do in a given situation. But the definition, again, goes back to the fact that you are, in some cases, obliged by law for what you do. And that's what AAs were being told. Any service board you have serving over your region or your national organization or group, I should say, is responsible to the people who they serve. You can always learn more at 12drawings.com. Thanks so much for watching.